kids are always fun, aren't they? And it's great to have grandkids. And you always have that little bonus that you can ship them back to their parents once they've run their course of things. But kids have a certain honesty that makes them very interesting. One little boy was overheard praying, and he prayed this way: Lord, if you can't make me a better boy, well, don't worry about it. I'm having a great time just like I am. So, after the christening of his baby brother in church, little Jason sobbed all the way home in the back seat of the car. And his father asked him 3 different times, Jason, what's wrong? Well, finally, the boy got his nerve up to tell him. And the boy replied, that preacher said he wanted us to be brought up in a Christian home, and I want to stay with you guys. And then there was a mother had 2 little boys, and 2 boys or more is always going to have plenty of mischief. And little Kevin, 5 years old, and his brother Ryan, 3 years old, at breakfast time, they were fighting over who was going to get the first pancake that mom was making. They love pancakes. And the mother, being very smart, saw an opportunity to teach her boys a little lesson. And she said, now, if Jesus were sitting here, he would say, let my brother have the first pancake. I can wait. Little Kevin, things started moving, and he turned to his little brother and he said, okay, Ryan, you be Jesus. When we're children, it's just great, isn't it? Just have that simple innocence about life, trying to put things together in a very simple way. But something happens. We grow up, we become adults, and we discover stress and worry. We discover mortgage. We discover bills. We discover car payments. And we discover all these other things that fall down upon us, build up our anxiety, build up all these things. And one day we wake up wondering how it happened. We're stuck. We're caught in despair. We're caught in bondage. We're caught in our inhibitions. We're afraid to step out anymore. We're not sure about what we really want anymore. We're just carrying on through the motions. And we find ourselves stuck in our own bondage, in our own despair. Jesus came into our world to meet us at this very point. When Jesus began his ministry at his first sermon at his home church in Nazareth, and he came and preached to the people, quoting from the book of Isaiah. And if I might share that short scripture lesson again, it's found in Luke chapter 4, verses 18 through 19. Jesus spoke, quoting from Isaiah the prophet, the Spirit of the Lord is on me, because he has anointed me to proclaim good news to the poor. He has sent me to proclaim freedom for the prisoners and recovery of sight for the blind, to set the oppressed free, and to proclaim the year of the Lord's favor. And Luke, in putting his gospel together, has done such an orderly job that he begins giving us examples of this sermon, how Jesus is focusing his ministry. And a little bit later in the chapter, we get a great demonstration of this. When Jesus comes into a synagogue, encounters a demon-possessed man. Luke 4, beginning in verse 33. In the synagogue, there was a man possessed by a demon, an impure spirit. And he cried out at the top of his voice, go away. What do you want with us, Jesus of Nazareth? Have you come to destroy us? I know who you are, the Holy One of God. Be quiet, Jesus said sternly, and come out of him. Then the demon threw the man down before them all and came out without injuring him. And all the people were amazed and said to each other, what words these are! With authority and power, he gives orders to impure spirits, and they come out. And the news about him spread throughout the surrounding area. And the ministry of Jesus himself is demonstrated and explained in the book of Hebrews sometime later, when the writer of the book of Hebrews has these words in chapter 2. Since the children have flesh and blood, he too shared in their humanity, so that by his death he might break the power of him who holds the power of death, that is the devil, and free those who all their lives were held in slavery by their fear of death. May God add power to the reading of this word, that these words come into our hearts with a new challenge, wakening us up to see life in a little different perspective, to see eyes with eyes of the Holy Spirit guiding us. Jesus has many experiences in his ministry, and the miracles are recorded in the Gospels. One thing that's important to note is that as Luke and the other Gospel writers put these miracle stories together, it's for a reason. There's a purpose in this and what Jesus does. It's not as though Jesus is walking around with his disciples and all of a sudden Jesus nudges Peter and says, "Hey, watch this. This is going to be pretty cool," and then does a miracle. But Jesus does miraculous things to teach lessons. Are you paying attention? He who has ears to hear, let him hear. How many times did Jesus make that statement? Listen, pay attention to what's happening. When Jesus walks into this particular synagogue, there's a man there possessed of a demon and starts doing demonic activity. I thought, wouldn't that be an interesting church to go to? All of a sudden, somebody breaks out and rants and does all these things. I guarantee you, no one ever fell asleep in that church. They would always stay awake, wondering what's going to happen next year. And Jesus encounters this poor situation. This demon-possessed man can't even speak for himself. The demons have taken over. And Jesus commands with great authority as the Son of God, "Go away. Shut up. Be quiet. Come out of him." And the demons respond. And they give up their prey. And they cast the man down before everybody and leave him. But we must pay attention to the man. Sometimes the spectacle, the pizzazz catches us, the demons that are there. But the demons that have left, and now this man is before them, he is free. He has been possessed. The demons have taken him over. He has been in bondage. He has been a prisoner to their will. He's lost his own will. I appreciate the way it's stated in the Gospel of Mark when Jesus cleanses the Gerasene demoniac. And at the very end of the story, this is how it concludes. The man having the demons cast out of him and dressed and in his right mind. I like to think that Jesus healed this man, cured this man, took care of him. And then Jesus said, well, it's not just simply enough that you're healed. You need some more clothes. Those clothes are awful. They're all battered. Let's get you some better clothes. He's dressed. He's in his right mind. Jesus takes care of this man psychologically. The trauma that has fallen upon him. Surely post-traumatic stress disorder is going to be the case of this man. But Jesus takes time for the follow-up. Jesus can say to this man, you have been in bondage. You have been a prisoner. It may not have been a jail with literal bars, but the demons were the bars, and they kept you a prisoner. Jesus would come to many of us, would come to all of us, and say, are you aware that you're a prisoner? Are you aware of the inhibitions in your life have caught you and trapped you and are holding you back and keeping you down? We face these things, trying to find our liberation, but we keep finding ways we sabotage ourselves, keep finding ways we stumble, and sometimes it's our own fault. Sometimes we make these mistakes. But Jesus wants to come to us and to say, I can set you free. Are you willing to be free? Are we willing to step out of our own bondage? I want to do a little exercise with you. I did at the 8:30 service. They did okay. There's 5 words in this script. Okay, I'm going to have all of us do it. Okay, here's your 5 words in this script. Okay, ready? Oh, good Lord, it's morning. Okay, got it? Oh, good Lord, it's morning. We're going to do it in a depressed way. Then we're going to do it in a positive way. When I was in marketing with Warner Brothers, we learned some fascinating things about human nature. We'd take people, I'd train them. I know I made my peace with God about this, how they manipulate us when they come to us. But you can say terrible things to someone, insult them terribly. But if you're smiling and do it with a nice inflection, you'd be amazed what you can get away with. You can come up to someone and say, you fat-headed, arrogant son of a gun, you. It's so good to see you. And smile, and then walk away. They won't figure it out for hours. You've just insulted them. Politicians do that all the time, but I will digress if I go there. Once you learn these secrets, you get very afraid and nervous when politicians are speaking. They know those secrets too. But there's all the ways you say it. It's in the inflection, it's in the attitude of your heart. That's what makes the difference. Remember your script? Oh, good Lord, it's morning. Here's how we say it if we're in despair, if we're stuck in our bondage of depression. We would say, wake up in the morning, go into the bathroom, and say, oh, good Lord, it's morning. Okay, ready? I want you to try it now. Okay, ready? Let's hear your best depression come out here. Ready? Here we go. Oh, good Lord, it's morning. You did that too well. Okay, we got to work on this. Too well. Okay, let's try it now a different way. Same script, but let's say it with some enthusiasm. I'm positive. I've got faith. I'm going to make it through this day. It might go something like this. You wake up in the morning, step in the bathroom, look yourself in the mirror, and say, oh, good Lord, it's morning. What do you think? Let's give it a try. Okay, let's hear your best optimism and getting your day started. Here we go. Oh, good Lord, it's morning. You did that well too. Doesn't that feel better? Don't you feel better when you condition yourself to look at the day with a positive demeanor, with some faith? You say, I think I can make it. I'm going to start being a little more positive about how I see things. Many people in our own country are stuck in pessimism, stuck in negative ways. And they are stuck. It's hard to get out. They're immediately programmed to see the difficult in life, immediately programmed to see the negative, and they're trapped. Jesus wants to come to each and every one of us in those moments and say there's a way out. C.S. Lewis has written marvelous things, and I'm quite a fan of Lewis. One of the books he wrote was The Great Divorce, and that's a terrible title. It has nothing to do with marriage or divorce. He originally entitled it Who Goes Home? And the publishers, they do evil things. They change titles because they think it'll sell more books. Anyway, another story. But in this story, it's very imaginative. It's about heaven, it's about hell. And if people in hell have an opportunity to get on a bus and take a trip to heaven and see if they might be interested, see if they'd like to stay in heaven. You think, well, of course, automatic they'd want to stay in heaven. Well, it's an imaginative story, a little fantasy here. They get on the bus, they take the trip, they get all the way to heaven, they get out once they get to heaven, and guess what? They don't like it. They complain about the grass, it hurts their feet. They complain about the light, it's too bright, and they don't like it in heaven. And at the end of the story, it works out where they finally get back on the bus to go back to hell. Very interesting perspective. But in the midst of all this, there's an interesting dialogue that happens, a number of them. But one of these cases is an angel coming up to one of the women visiting heaven. And she begins to complain to the angel. She says, I wish I had never been born. What are we born for anyway? What's the point? And the angel responds to her and answers her question. Where are you born? You are born for infinite happiness. You can step out into it at any moment when you're ready. God did not create any of us to be miserable. God created us for infinite happiness. Look at what heaven is all about. God says, I've got eternity ready for you. It's incredible happiness that you cannot even imagine in this world's lifetime. God has wonderful things ready for us. And it changes the way we think now. I love studying the life of Paul the Apostle. And Paul and Silas, they took missionary journeys all around the then known world. This coming Wednesday in my Bible study, we're going to be talking about this incident when Paul and Silas get to Philippi. And while they're able to do great things for the kingdom, and they heal a woman that's a fortune teller and able to free her from her own bondage. But the people turn on Paul and Silas because they've ruined their business. They made a lot of money from this woman being a fortune teller. They take them, they beat them, they kick them, they throw rocks at them, they take them before the magistrates, they beat them up some more, they put them in a dungeon. And again, we're not talking about Maricopa jail system with TVs and such, but dungeon, dark, damp, smells horrible. They put them in stocks when they're in the dungeon. I don't know if you've ever been in stocks just for the fun of it. You don't get comfortable. Pulls your joints out, you can't rest. And there's Paul and Silas in this dungeon after all of these beatings, and it's horrible. And during the night, about midnight, Paul nudges over to Silas and says, Silas, you awake? He said, yeah. Silas, isn't it great? Isn't it wonderful? And Silas, I can just imagine his response. Paul, they hit you in the head a few times, didn't they, during all this? You're not thinking straight anymore, are you? And Paul says, no, it's wonderful. We are able to suffer for God. We're able to suffer for Jesus Christ, just like he suffered. We're with him in this. They beat us up. They did all this because we are serving God. I think it's great. God's impressed with us. We should be happy that we're considered worthy to suffer for the sake of the gospel. Says Silas, you know what I want to do? I want to sing a hymn of praise. And Silas says, okay. And they start, check it out, Acts chapter 16, verse 25. About midnight, Paul and Silas were praying and singing hymns of praise to God. I think it might have been Amazing Grace that answer. I'm not sure. We don't get the name of the song. But they started singing praises to God, and the prisoners started listening, and more incredible things happening. How can a man do this? Is Paul nuts? Let's say it. Is he nuts? Or does he know something that we need to pay attention to? That circumstances shall not determine his happiness. Circumstances will not steal away his joy. He will still be happy with God despite what's happening to him on the outside. He is still faithful to follow after God's ways. Circumstances has nothing to do with it in Paul's mind. He's free. He's got the joy of Christ in his heart, and he shall prevail. He shall overcome all the adversity. He's learned freedom. Christ has come and has liberated him, and he can be free. There was a bazaar that was held in a village in northern India. There was a merchant that had pigeons and had trained the pigeons to be on a table and walk around in circles around this little pole. And you look closely, and there's little strings attached to the feet of the pigeons, and it's attached to rings on the pole. And that's all the pigeons do is walk around in a circle all day. And a man came and saw this and thought it was awful. He said, I want to buy these pigeons. And the merchant said, okay, they're for sale. He said, okay, I'll buy them all, and gives them the money. And the man says, now here's what I want you to do. Cut the strings on these feet of the pigeons and let them be free. I can't stand to watch them in prison like this. And the merchant kind of smirked a bit and said, okay, cut the string on all of the pigeons' feet. And guess what happened next? The pigeons continued to walk around the pole. Even though they're free, they're so used to it. They continue to walk around in this mesmerizing trance. The man shoos them away. They fly off the table and go over and land a little ways away. And guess what they do over there? They start walking around in circles again and again. They don't know they're free. They still think they're in bondage. Maybe that story is a good parable of where we find ourselves sometimes. We're still in bondage, walking around in circles, not getting anywhere, not realizing that Jesus Christ has already set us free. We need to find that freedom in life, to be able to rise up, to be able to break off those shackles that hold us down and be free. In the movie Braveheart, it's a great scene in that one. You know where I'm headed. William Wallace giving his great speech, and he begins to proclaim to the people, I fight and you may die, run and you'll live at least for a while, and dying in your beds many years from now. Would you be willing to trade all the days from this day to that? Imagine me holding up my sword now as I get the full effect here. For one chance, just one chance to come back here and tell our enemies that they may take our lives. Hear the drama. But they'll never take our freedom. And everybody gets riled up and attacks, and the battle begins. Our freedom. Standing up for our personal freedom that we have in Jesus Christ. That's why he came into our world, as the writer of Hebrews explains to us. Since the children have flesh and blood, he too shared in their humanity, so that by his death he might break the power of him who holds the power of death, that is the devil, and free those who all their lives were held in slavery by their fear of death. Jesus comes to bring us freedom, to make us free, to liberate us from our own fears, liberate us from our own inhibitions, that we might be all that He has created us to be, and to start enjoying now that infinite happiness that He has for His people.